Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon, evening, morning, from wherever you are. Before we start this webinar, I have a privilege to give the floor to, Amen. Amen is the president of Africa TESOL. Amen, you have the floor.
Thank you, Flavian. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this month's webinar. Before we start, I would just like to draw your attention that we have recently undergone name change. So Africa TESOL is now Africa ELTA, Africa English Language Teachers Association. And this name, we believe, reflects who we are and also is in line with the names that many of our affiliates have. So this reflects the work that we do, and it will also be in solidarity with our affiliates. So the name Africa TESOL will gradually be phased out, and Africa ELTA will take its place. So I just wanted to make this announcement, and the process took place a couple of days ago, and we did it through a survey to our members. And we had two names, final names, and the members voted for Africa ELTAs. Majority of the members voted for Africa ELTA. So going forward, Africa TESOL is now Africa ELTA. Thank you, everyone, and enjoy the webinar.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. Today is Saturday, the 12th of December, 2020. You're welcome to Africa TESOL monthly webinar. And for some times now, climate change is perceived as one of the major challenges of today. And in order to help people to comprehend and take actions, okay, it is important to educate them. And this is the objective of today's webinar, whose title is Climate Emergency: What Action Can the Language Teaching Community Take in the Classroom? This presentation will be led by Owen. Owen is a language teaching specialist as well as an environmentalist. Owen, the floor is yours. Welcome and have the floor.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Flavian, and thank you for the opportunity to take part in this webinar. I'm very happy, and thank you, Ayman, too. So my name is Owen, and I'm currently working in Algiers, Algeria, at the British Council here. I've been an English language teacher for many years now, and as Flavian mentioned, my particular interest is integrating environmental issues into the language classroom. And I'm here today to do this webinar and to share what I have learned, and also I'm looking forward to hearing the ideas of people here who are taking part in the webinar, and there will be the chance for this in the second part of the webinar. So to get started then, I'd like to introduce the outcomes. We're going to evaluate 10 tips for bringing the climate emergency and, in fact, sustainability, environmental issues, green issues into the classroom. And there will be the chance to share ideas towards the end. and reflect on what we've learned in this webinar. And by we, I mean you and I always learn a great deal from participants in such events. So, just want to start off with a little story. When I was, I can't remember, 11, 12, 13, my dad took me on a fishing trip, and we went out on this little fishing boat. I had a fishing rod, and it was, you know, one of these father and son bonding moments. Happens all over the world. Father and son goes fishing. Didn't have the desired outcome, at least not the outcome that my dad planned. After seeing what happened when he caught a fish, and you know how you had to kill it and everything, it had the effect that I went vegetarian. Instead of getting a lifelong fishing hobby, I went vegetarian. I'm not sure what my dad thought of that. So I really think that this was one of the first points where I became interested in environmental issues. Since that day, I have enjoyed eating fish. I haven't kept to that, but I've still always remained keen on environmental issues. And as I became a teacher, it was on my mind. I want to teach English, but I want to share a love of the environment and a wish and the knowledge on how to protect it. And I think a lot of it stems back to that fishing trip I did. So yes, that is perhaps the story of how I came to be here today. And it's towards in the second half of the presentation, I would love to hear how you as participants came to be at a webinar about environmental issues and how we deal with them in our language classrooms. Now, I would like to bring in a point here, which is, okay, normally in the classroom, I would tell my story and then I would get my class into groups and ask them to discuss in English what their story about environmental issues is, how it impacts them. And I'll get them to speak in English, which is great because then they are talking in English about the environment and their English will be getting better. So this leads to my first top tip, which is a story engages more than statistics. And I would always start with a story in the language classroom when I'm bringing in environmental issues. A few minutes ago, my son was watching something on YouTube. He's got into YouTube videos about environmental issues. Not sure where he got that from. But anyway, he was watching a video about plastic bags and the harm they cause to the environment. He's 8 years old and they kept talking about grams of carbon dioxide and statistics, and I really feel that they would be better making these videos, and we in our lessons should focus on stories. The power of a story as a starting point and the center of a lesson. Now, as well as that, I put tip number 2, using appropriate methodology. In English language teaching, we're encouraged not to have too much teacher talking time and to take the focus away from the teacher and to the students. So if I tell my story, it's only right that I get my learners to share their stories. And whether you have a small class of 18 or a very big class of 50, you can always get learners into groups of 3 or 4 learners and make them speak about something like this. Yes, it will be noisy, but it's the noise of people, students learning. So it gets the focus away from the teacher and to the students so they can share their story. And tip number 3, personalize. Sometimes we can think of the environment and environmental issues as this great big issue that's out there and away from the individual, that we have people and we have the environment. It's not that. It's obviously closely linked. And also everyone has their personal story about an environmental issue. So in my case, it was a fishing trip. I've heard some amazing stories from teachers I've met across the world, including Africa. A teacher I met recently, her name is Catherine from Tanzania, told me how she's tree planting on Kilimanjaro with her students. It's an amazing story. So yes, personalize it. Now, getting to the contents of this webinar, we've already covered tip number 1, basing it on a story, basing your lesson on a story. Tip number 2, using appropriate methodology, and most of all that is getting the input from the teacher and then moving it to the students, or even starting with the students as well. And personalized, get it away from gigatons of carbon dioxide or hectares of forest planted or destroyed, get it to the individual human story. Moving on to the next thing, we'll be looking at localizing and the importance of that. The text that you choose, if you can choose the text for your lesson. Obviously we have syllabuses to follow and don't always have as much choice as we'd like. Empowering action. It's not just knowing about the problem, but what action can we take? We're going to look at a language outcome because we're language teachers, and also an environment outcome. Asking questions and not lecturing. We know our students don't like to be told what to do by their teachers always. And number 9, embedding in other topics. Number 10, I don't know what number 10 is, but I'm hoping you're going to tell me at the end what number 10 should be according to you. And I really look forward to your ideas on this. So here we have 2 pictures, and pictures are always a good starting point. And my question to you is, if we're doing a lesson focusing on climate change, environmental issues, which of these images would you choose to introduce the topic and why? Which would be more engaging for your students? Well, feel free to type any comments into the chat as we go along. Where I teach in Algeria, the second picture is a familiar environment themed picture, but I don't think my students will relate to it. It is cold. It is very, very far away from Algeria. So although we often see pictures of icebergs when thinking about climate change, it's just too far from my students' experience. So I would definitely go with the first picture. It has a lot going for it. It's closer to the reality of my students in Algeria, and It's also got a close-up of the person, which is an added benefit because now we see people and it's relevant to where I work. I see someone else has also put in chat that they also think that the first picture, and they like the green color. Yes, a lot warmer than the other. So this leads to tip number 4, localizing the lesson, localizing the text and the images as much as possible. And yes, thank you, Amadou, for putting your comment in. Choosing the image depends on the area you are. It's so true. And so that is why it's important for us to vary from what maybe our course books have and take a picture from a local newspaper, a magazine, or a picture that you have taken. Okay, now, a text is, for me, a really important start to any lesson, this input that gets students relating to the topic of the lesson. So what counts as a text? I'd say it's extremely broad. We could choose a video. Always good, but let's face it, internet goes down, projectors might not be available or working. It's a luxury if you have the opportunity for a video. And if you don't, there are so many other simpler options to use. Image, this is one of my favorites because it can be on a piece of paper, it can be on your smartphone, or if possible, it can be on a projector. Much more user-friendly, works in any situation more so than a video. Audio, another great thing, text, whether that's recorded audio, the teacher's voice, even the student's voices, what they say. And a book or a poem, and an infographic or poster or a website. And just to go back, sorry, we've talked about a poem, and I know that someone I know is in this session, and this person would like to read a poem for this section, a poem that they shared with me. I know them from a course we did together. Now, Justine, are you there? And could I ask Iman, could you share to Justine, who is, I hope, in this session? She said she would be here if her internet permits.
Yes, Justin, I think Galaxy C7 Pro.
I think it is, yes.
Okay, I will allow her to talk. You can unmute yourself, Justine.
Don't worry if it's not going to work, Justine. You mentioned that there may be issues with bandwidth.
Hello.
Hello, Justine. How are you? Don't worry, Justine, if you have the chance to come and join us later, just say hello again and you can read your poem.
Yeah.
Ah, you're here. Great. You have a poem for us, don't you, Justine?
Yeah. Okay. Can I read my poem?
Please do, yes.
Okay. The title is Forever Sustainable. Save our beautiful planet. Unite all human forces and step forward for relevant actions. Train more and more young people to adopt a green and bio attitude in that industrial society where the nature, our source of life, except unfortunately its bullying and harsh destruction by industries of high technology, longing for huge financial profits in a competitive business environment targeted by multinationals whose yearly finance flows are duty-free. Here is my poem about sustainability.
Thank you, Justine. It's amazing. Where did you get it, or did you write it?
Yeah, I did it myself.
Fantastic and really good. And I think this is such a great idea of a text that you can use in any classroom. It comes from the heart, comes from the individual. We don't need to go hunting for the right text. Love it. Yes. Thank you, Justine.
Thank you. Don't mention it.
Speak again soon. So yes, the text, it can come from within. And this leads, so I love Justine's poem, and I think I could imagine a lesson around that in which the students will listen to it, they will answer some questions about it, and then they will create their own one. And I did something a little bit similar, not with a poem, although I think I'm going to write a poem next. I'm inspired to do so. I used this picture, which was shared with me on Facebook from a graffiti artist in Thailand. And I thought, oh, my teenagers are like this. And here's the picture. And I put my students into groups again. And I say, talk about these questions that you can see here, and discuss in pairs or groups, and then tell me your thoughts. So imagine I'm a student and I'm like talking to my friends, what's happening in this picture? Well, it's pretty strange here. There's a blue person with a beard and a rucksack, and he's riding on a turtle in the sea, but the turtle has an exhaust pipe like a motorbike, and it has a bag on it full of plastic bottles. Why is that? And then the next question, do you like the picture? Imagine I'm a teenager. Yeah, I think this is a pretty cool picture. Why did someone paint this picture? I think it's talking about the amount of plastic waste we produce and that goes into the sea, and it's important that we start clearing it up. And then from one picture, we can have so much English speaking or language speaking practice from our students with just one pic. I reckon with this picture, you can get 10 minutes of discussion. And I think with similar questions, you could have students talking for 10 minutes based on a poem like Justine's or many other texts. So what does this lead to? This leads to tip number 5, choose the right text and exploit it. Get that poem, get that picture, and make the students speak about it. Now we come to lesson outcomes, and we're all teachers. We're used to either creating our own lesson outcomes, or maybe more often we have outcomes we have to fulfill that come from the syllabus. And often we can reword them to make our outcomes better. And here's a typical lesson outcome. By the end of the lesson, students will have a better awareness of the importance of reducing plastic pollution, maybe because they've seen that picture in the slide before. Or we can add this outcome. By the end of the lesson, students will have created a poster, 5 ways teenagers can act on climate change while improving their social status. Now, which one is a better outcome? Feel free to put your comments in chat. My feeling is the second one. Why? Because it has a very clear outcome which empowers the learners to do something about the problem. The first one, they learn about the problem. The second one, they think about ways to solve it. And it's not us telling them, it's they come up with these ideas. So I prefer the second outcome because it empowers them to act on the problem. Just like these children in the picture you can see. So this leads to tip number 6. Empower your students to choose a course of action. We know there's a problem. We know there's the climate emergency, environmental issues, and it can feel a bit depressing if we just hear about it. But once we say to our students, what do you think we can do about it? It becomes a more optimistic and empowered feeling. Now, at the same time, we must remember it's a language lesson, and I've managed to find this picture with hello. I'm afraid it's, as far as I know, it's just hello in many different South African languages. I was looking one for the whole of Africa, but I didn't manage to get one in time. But the point is that this is a language lesson. So what we might do here is add another outcome, which is by the end of the lesson, students will have created a poster, 5 ways teenagers can act on climate change while improving their social status, and be better able to make statements, to give advice using language such as try using a reusable bag, or avoid traveling by car when you can go by train or bus. Consider having a garden where you grow your own produce. So at this point, if anyone asks, what's the language outcome? You can say, well, in making this poster, here is their language outcome. And at this point, I've heard a really interesting thing, again from a teacher I know, Justine, who has not only written a poem. Justine is really busy. Justine has told me about this test she has made to test environmental knowledge. Would it be possible to allow Justine to speak about this? And Justine, could you, in about a minute, tell us about this test you've made?
Well, okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I gave a test to my advanced level learners, and the title of the text was Business Goes Green. And the text talks about customers who actually want to buy products which are biodegradable. They want to make sure that the product they buy is that doesn't damage the ozone layer, and they will recycle the metal used after using the product. But the question I asked my student was, what is the business interest of the document, of the text? And I gave them some vocabulary items to give the synonyms and antonyms, true-false statement on the text. And as a producing language, I say, write a slogan and explain it to companies on the environmental issues. A slogan for young students in order to show the importance of green products in the society. And I think there were some translations from English to French. That was an interesting test, and the student loved the text and the process of writing slogan.
That sounds great, Justine, and thank you for telling us about this.
Okay.
Really great. And I think that what this is a really good example of is how we are special. There are environmentalists and there is us. We are teachers with an interest in the topic, and where we specialize is making this topic accessible and a learning thing for our students. And I think that's a really unique skill. And this is where ultimately we'll be judged by, have we done a good language lesson? So, tip number 7, include a language outcome and an environment outcome. So just like this example we heard from Justine, the students learned about this topic and also they had to use their English language to do it. Okay, now I like to give my students discussion points, and here are some examples, and these are the questions that again I'll get them into their groups to discuss, and I might change climate emergency, I might just change it to the local environmental issue where I live. So here in Algeria, forest fires are an issue. It could be deforestation or litter in the city. I'd ask my learners to discuss this. And also, how did you come to feel like this? What do other people you know say about it? They have 10 minutes to discuss this, and then they come back and tell me what they think. And why I think this really benefits students is their teacher is asking them questions and their teacher's not lecturing them, because I have found that my students, especially the teenage ones, they don't like me telling them what to think. But if I ask them what they think about an issue, they're very happy to do that and they have lots to say. So I'm not going to tell them, I'm your teacher and you must use a reusable bag, because they'll say, don't want to do what you tell as teacher. But if I ask them what they think, they will come up with the ideas. So, something else. We are teachers who have packed syllabuses, and one of the biggest challenges people have often told me they face is a busy syllabus, and they feel they don't have time to do what they really want to in classes. So they might, in my case, as a teaching purely language, I often have a topic which students have to do from the course book or the course. It might be food or transport. It might be about holidays or the future. I'm teaching them to talk about the future in English. Or functional language, like teaching my students to order in a restaurant. And I don't get to choose these topics. They're just there. However, I can always bring in environmental issues, the climate emergency, because there's always an angle to all the other topics we have to cover. Food. Are our students eating in McDonald's, or are they eating home-cooked food from vegetables from their garden? What is the environmental impact of this? Or what are their thoughts about the future in terms of the environment? There's always an angle. We may not be able to do a whole lesson on the environment, but we can always put an environmental perspective on almost any topic, even if sometimes I would only have 10 minutes of a whole lesson to do this. So, embed the climate emergency in other topics. It's not separate. This is my tip number 9, and this is something I've come to really believe is more and more important. Don't just do an environmental lesson once a term. Talk about the environment in every lesson of every other topic. And tip number 10, I don't know. This is where I'm going to look forward to hearing your ideas. We'll come to that in a minute, but first, a little bit of revision. And although I made this presentation, I don't always have a very good memory. So I always need to remind myself of what these tips are. So for example, tip number 1 was a story engages more than statistics. What was tip number 2? If you can remember, feel free to type it into the box. Don't worry if you don't remember. I have difficulty, but here we have a reminder. Use appropriate methodology. We might start with the teacher's story, but move it to the students, get them talking and using their language skills. Tip number 3, personalize it. Away from the statistics, the big picture of the global picture, and bring it to the individual. Tip number 4, I'm not even going to try and say it myself without seeing it, because I would probably have got it wrong. Yes, to localize it. Make the pictures, the stories related to where your students live. Choosing the right text, whether you find a picture someone else has drawn, a poem that you've created, and exploit to get the students discussing it. Number 6, empower your students. Remember, it's not just about the students learning about the problem, it's the students discussing solutions to this problem, what they should do, and that's really much better for them as people to come up with solutions. Number 7, remember, someone's going to be checking, have you reached your language outcomes? Are the students improving their English? Make sure that is covered. And usually when students are discussing a problem and coming up with solutions, they're using their language and they're getting better. Let it come from them. Ask lots of questions, don't lecture, let them come up with the ideas. Embed it in other topics. We probably have packed syllabuses and we may have 5 minutes, 10 minutes to deal with this, but that's good, little and often. Tip number 10. Well, I'm going to give the floor to all of you now. Feel free to share your tips and also to ask questions. But just before we do, I would like to share something with you, which is in January 7th, there is an online course which I'm delivering for 2 weeks, starts in January the 7th. Justine has already taken part in a number of, and Flavian and a number of others. It's fun, interactive, and you meet teachers from all around the world. There's a free mini course also available. And the reason I'm mentioning this is TESOL, Global Issues Special Interest Group, are offering a free sponsored place on this course in January to teachers who are members of TESOL Africa or who are a teacher in Africa. And you're welcome to apply to join if you can connect online, have reasonable IT skills and are interested in the environment and can spare 4 hours per week for 2 weeks. If you're interested, please send an email by 21st of December explaining in under 100 words why you'd like a place to this email address, and the people at TESOL will be judging the entries, and you stand the chance to win a place on this course. So now over to you. I would like to hear tip number 10, and I'd like to hear questions from you to me, comments. Let's chat. Oh, we have one. Hadiza Amul. Tip 10, make students respect the environment whenever possible in their daily activities. Absolutely, and this is a point that other people have come up with too, which is of course a sign that great minds think alike, because if it stays just in the lesson, we haven't really succeeded. But if they take it away and take it outside their lesson to their everyday lives, then we are really succeeding. Thank you. If I'm correct, your name is Hadija. Thank you for this idea. What a great tip number 10. Does anyone else have a similar or even a different tip number 10? Another question from Justine. Could they investigate local solutions other people have for environmental issues? Definitely. And this is where every one of you has this unique skill, power basically to do this, that you know your students and the area that they live in, and you can find these local solutions. If I could refer back to the story I heard from Catherine, who took part, who I know from the course, and she was telling us about how she was doing tree planting on Mount Kilimanjaro with her students. A local solution that, well, I am envious of her students for having this opportunity. It must have been great for them. So, yes. Hamida, hello. Nice to see you here. Hamida, who I've also met online, has also posted an idea for tip number 10, which is also really nice. The text could be interesting and positive. Yes, we often hear the bad news with environmental issues, and this can have the effect of making students just switch off. It's like, oh, another forest has been cut down, I don't want to hear about it. However, if you hear like this, someone has this amazing idea, or is doing an amazing thing, and you can base the lesson around that, it's so much more positive and empowering for the students and probably more motivating. Some really nice points here. If I could just check with Flavien. Flavien, you have a closer eye on the chat than I do while I'm speaking. Is there anything I have missed? Any questions?
You have an interesting question here. Why are some people indifferent to environmental issues? I mean, people indifference and the environmental issues. What should be the causes why people don't care too much about those environmental issues? Could you please clear up this?
It's a great question, and I wish I knew the whole answer. However, I don't, but I may know a partial answers to this question. One is when I think back to myself, after that fishing trip, for the whole of my teenage years, I was really interested in environmental issues. And then around the time I was about 23, I just lost interest completely. I had other things going on in my life. I was just starting teaching English. I was getting used to working for the first time, and I just stopped thinking about environmental issues for, it must have been 7 years maybe. And then slowly I got back into them, and now I'm interested in them again. And what stopped me, maybe it was having other worries at the time, maybe just a phase of my life. Sometimes this just happens, and I wish I knew the answer why. I think one thing that happens is, and this is where maybe we can have the biggest impact, is our students often hear the same stories about the environment, or that it is presented to them in the same way, which is often we as teachers being forced to tell them how they should live. And I think you can often change many students' views by just giving them the chance to discuss it and come up with their own ideas, rather than telling them you must do this. That's all I can say. It's a huge question, and I haven't answered the whole thing, but this is maybe part of it.
You have, during your presentation, talked about 10 important tips that teachers can use in order to integrate environmental issues in the lessons.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the attendees were expecting to see a lesson plan in order to effectively learn how to insert, to integrate all these issues in the lessons. So could you share some tips on this, how to, plan a lesson in which we integrate environmental issues?
Yes, sure. Probably the resource that I'd recommend having a look at is, I've created a website of language teaching lesson plans, which deal with environmental issues, and I think I have the link to it here. Yes, so ELTsustainable.com is my website that I've run since 2012, and I regularly made lessons and posted them here. They are shared, they are free for anyone, that I hope are usable for many people to bring in environmental issues into the language classroom. Do you think this link is sufficient, Flavian?
As well, yes, you know, but people will also hear from the horse's mouth. If you could also give explain I mean wrap up how to do that to design such a lesson plan, it will be I don't know, welcome.
Sure. Yes, let me think. This is the way that I generally follow, and many different teachers here with many different ideas. This works for me. Usually, I have a class and I don't have complete choice over what I can teach. I have a syllabus to follow. So I look at the syllabus and what I have to do today. Let's say, for example, today I have to teach present perfect in the context of people talking about their experience. And that's what I've got to cover, regardless. So then my next step is to find a text, whether it's the poem, a picture, something that somehow relates to that lesson outcome that I've been given in my syllabus, but brings in an environmental topic to it. So let's say it was present perfect for experience, like I have done this in my life. I might then find a picture about someone who's achieved something great. Off the top of my head, I will choose Justine because she has not only written a poem about the environment, she has made a test for her students. So I will get a picture of Justine in this case, and I will have some sentences, what she has done. And then I will make my students create something. So it might be a questionnaire like, what have you done for the environment? And they will write some questions. They might even need just one question. What have you done? And I'll make them put it onto a table with an empty space for everyone's name. And then I'll make them talk to the other students to find out what the other students have done for the environment. And I hope that in this way, and then at the end, I'll ask them to tell me what they learned from talking to the other students. So I hope that in this way, I've met the syllabus aims, which I have to, which was teaching present perfect for experience, but I've given the students a text that they can relate to about a person, in this case, Justine. And then from that, they're able to then take that language and use it with each other. That would generally be my approach to modifying my syllabus to include an environmental aim. Does that help?
Yes. Now let's turn to teachers training. How far? What I mean, I know that you're organizing many training, online training, and but is it possible to extend this also to? Yes, we are in COVID-19 context today, and we are all afraid of physical contact. But in the future, is it possible to have you invite you so that you could definitely for 1 day, 2 days of training, train teachers, because that issue of climate change, environmental issues are very important. What do you think?
Um, I, I would love to. You're talking about online teacher training.
Yes.
Yes, this is something I'm doing quite a lot of at the moment due to the reasons you've mentioned of COVID-19 and lockdown. I've had to do a lot more teaching online and training online. So the idea sounds really nice, and this sounds like a conversation we should definitely follow up on, you and I, Flavien.
Okay, before we end up this webinar, I'll give you the floor. You were talking about an important training that will be held in January. Could you still come back on this training?
Yes, I'll just return to that slide, which is this the one you are referring to, or
Yes.
this one?
Yeah.
So this is like the overview of why it's good. Flavien, you took part in it, so you need no further explanation of what it is, but perhaps you can tell others. And also the fact that Global Issues Special Interest Group are very kindly sponsoring people in Africa to take part. Do you have any further questions about this, Flavien, or anything you'd like to say?
I just want you to come to it again to announce it.
Sure. And I can actually see that Linda Ruas is in this webinar, and she is, I believe, representing Global Issues Special Interest Groups. I'd like to say a great big thank you to her for arranging these sponsored places. If you would like to be considered for these places, you just have to write this email in about 100 words saying why you'd like to take part. Linda will probably be the one reading these and choosing people to join. And I understand we have challenges with the internet. However, Flavien, you took part, and I think at times the internet was problematic, but I think also you managed to take part to a great degree on this course, and I certainly enjoyed having you on it. But if you have a level of IT skills, can connect online and are interested in the environment, I think it would be great for people to apply. And I would love to meet people for a 2-week period on this course.
Okay, Owen, could you call back the poem reader? So to end this webinar, we would love to listen again to that poem.
I would too, yes. Justine, where are you? We want to hear your poem again.
Okay. The title of the poem is Forever Sustainable. Save our beautiful planet. Unite all human forces and step forward for relevant actions. Train more and more young people to adopt a green and bio attitude. In that industrial society where the nature, our source of life, accept unfortunately its bullying and harsh distraction by industries of high technology, longing for huge financial profits in a competitive business environment targeted by multinationals whose yearly financial flows are duty-free.
Well, very interesting poem.
Thank you.
And we
Yeah,
have,
thank you. I do appreciate.
yeah, it is great. And we have learned many things through that short poem. Yes, we have definitely to save our planet. And
Yeah,
this,
I can send a copy of it if you like. Doesn't matter.
yeah, it is welcome. Okay, we will.
Okay.
So, ladies and gentlemen, dear teachers of Africa TESOL, yes, it is important to save our planet, and this is through education. As a teacher of English language, we have from time to time to integrate these environmental issues in our lesson plan. Owen, thank you for being there, and we hope to see you again in other series of Africa TESOL webinars. And thank you to you all, and bye-bye.
Thank you so much for having me, and goodbye, everyone, and all the best.